All right. Hello, everybody. Just to repeat, my name is Leah Den Hartog. I am the editor of Plumbing and HVAC magazine. Um, we currently have 3 of our 5 panelists. As you can see, we have David Taft, Director of Sales and Webinar Training Manager at Canature WaterGroup, joined with also Mike Barone, Technical Trainer at Canature WaterGroup. We also have Pieter de Vries, president of UV Dynamics. Hopefully, we're still in contact with Shelley Peters and Jesse Couperthwaite. We seem to be just mistiming on some of the panel discussion here, so they will be hopefully joining us within the next few minutes. We have our team here at Plumbing and HVAC Magazine trying to figure out what's going on. Otherwise, we're going to kick off with what we have going right now, and hopefully Shelley and Jesse will be able to join in just a few. So I'm going to start out with a little bit of a broad question.
All right.
So,
there's Francesco.
Yes, Francesco is a member on a team. Shelley is here. She's supposed to be on camera. I don't know what's going on there. So, Francesco, if you could please help me figure that out. Otherwise, I'm going to start out with our first question. What would you say has been some of the innovations that have been hitting the water treatment market within the last few years? David, Peter, Mike, any one of you guys want to jump on that question? Go ahead.
The innovations in water treatment. Am I on here?
Something yeah, you are.
Yep.
We can hear you.
I got another screen just came on. Okay. So most of the innovations really are certification for contaminants that have come up that we're finding out are health issues. And so the changes, while we're not using new materials necessarily, we're getting certification on existing materials like GAC or carbon, catalytic carbon, reverse osmosis. All of these different kinds of treatment are getting certified to handle substance like PFAS, microplastics, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing coming up on us. You know, asbestos in the water. There was a big expose last year in Canada on it. So all of this stuff, it's not necessarily that we have new materials, but we are certifying existing materials in different types of setups.
Well, and that's the key word that Mike just alluded to, is the certifications. So if it's not certified, then we're big advocates of why would you use it? Why would you put it in? Why would you bring something to your customer that isn't third-party certified, verifiable, that it's certified to do what it's supposed to do? There's Shelley.
Yeah, she's off stage, so I'm going to jump her on stage. There she is.
Hi, Shelley.
Hello, Dave.
David, Mike, I don't know if it's possible. Would you guys be able to put your cameras on?
We could. Could be scary, but we could do that.
How's that?
Mike, you're upside down.
That's okay. Keeps it interesting. Okay, so I had some follow-up questions based off of some of the things you both said, Mike and David. Talking about certification, here in Canada, what would you say, maybe Shelley, you might be the best person to answer this. I don't know if you heard the first answer, but for certification and talking about GAC, carbon capture, RO, PFAS, what would be the best resource for anyone looking to get into water treatment certifications here in Canada? What are their best resources?
CWQA, right, Shelley? NSF for the US, but
yeah, there's a couple of things actually. So any products in Canada have to be certified to a CSA B483.1. It covers predominantly the drinking water products. So people often think that that's just for reverse osmosis and things like that, but it does actually in the building code refer to point of use and point of entry equipment. Right. So that is the one, but obviously to check to make sure that your equipment is certified to the proper NSF standards. And there are a multitude of different standards for the different levels of certification required, but there are accesses that you can get through the certifying bodies to make sure that the products that you are selling are certified to those. And, those links can easily be shared, with the group afterwards, but through NSF, it'll tell you what products are certified to what level, and obviously through CSA and the others.
So anybody working with water treatment products, so water softeners, UV, anything along those lines, I know those are what we have a lot on the panel here today. Do they have to have any type of certification to be able to install those types of products?
They do.
Yes?
Yeah, you would do basically Canada is a bit advanced over the US, even though we are using by and large American standards. Many of these water treatment standards, they look at a number of the basic things they look at is, do they actually do what you're claiming that they're going to do? Is the material safe? And are they structurally adequate for the job that you're saying that they're going to do? And so what you'll find, let's say a filter housing, you will see lots of filter housings that the manufacturer makes the claim that it's NSF certified. But once you start looking into it, you find out it's only NSF certified for material safety, not structural integrity. And under CSA B483.1, you have to be certified for both.
For any
Spot
kind,
on.
go ahead. Okay. For any technicians, then I think you mentioned briefly that made me something I want to ask. So there's a lot of different products out in the market. How can a technician best identify a product that will actually work to what the end goal is compared to something that might not be workable? Is it something as simple as the CSA marking on the product to say that it's passed? What would be the best approach for something along those lines? Do you want to?
Peter kind of hit it on the head there with the certification.
Okay.
It can be very confusing. I'll give you an example. In London here, we had a lead situation about 10 years ago.
Okay.
When the chief public officer of health was telling everyone, well, if you want to take the lead out of your drinking water, you have to have an NSF approved filter. And so I called the guy up and had a long discussion with him on what you're saying really is very misleading, because someone could go to Canadian Tire or another big box store, see a filter that's got an NSF logo on it, that it's NSF certified, buy that filter and think it's going to take out lead. And I actually went to my local Canadian Tire and I saw people buying sediment filters thinking they were going to take out lead. And the joke was there was a Canadian supplier, all that sell in the big box stores, all their products are fully certified for performance. So you can buy one of their carbon filters and it'll list off that it's actually certified for lead removal, but the certification is done by CSA. So there was actually a product on the shelf that would have done the job that people were looking for to do, but they were buying something totally different because this public officer of health didn't understand that it had to be more than NSF.
I think you got to ask the question, certified for what?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
And I think the other thing too,
there's a lot of
these guys,
international certifications too, which don't hold any water, whether it be in the States or Canada, right?
For sure. Shelley, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think the biggest support to those that are on the meeting today would be to go to their suppliers, their manufacturers, and ask those questions. So in the case of, plumbers, they could go to the wholesaler could direct them to who the manufacturer is, and that manufacturer could supply who the, whether the products are certified or not. A lot of the products also will show the certifications right on the product or within the installation manual that they have. So the information is there. It's just a matter of, knowing exactly where to look for it. And that's where the support from the wholesalers and the manufacturers would be helpful.
Okay.
Good point.
Wonderful. Awesome. Any other points to add there?
Well, let me add this, that when you're dealing with contaminants that can affect people's health, all right, like what Peter sells for E. coli or cryptosporidium or things that affect people's health, and you put a product on that's not certified and doesn't do the job,
Mhm.
your liability is crazy. And, if you want to be out of business real quick, that's a good way to do it.
Awesome. All right. Well, Jesse, I also wanted to welcome you. Thank you for joining us. I'm
Sorry
going.
about that.
No worries whatsoever. I'm gonna go through one of our. I see a question in our chat function already, so I'm gonna jump over there. So Ramel asks, do we have access to funding / grant for R&D for water treatment innovation? Would any one of you guys have anything to add to that?
I mean, that the burden of that lays with the manufacturer almost always, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
A lot of
I
that
don't-
funding is provided through insert.
And I think Rommel, and hi Rommel, it's great to see you, but or hear from you. I can tell you that, we have through the CWQA tried to do some pre-budget submissions in order to try to get some funding for what I want to call innovative water treatment, like through the Canadian Green Homes grants and things like that. It's not at this point in time anything that we've been successful to get, but if you have a way to prove through the Canada Home grants that the equipment that you're installing may meet some of the water sense or electricity savings and things like that, then there may be a grant that you can look at that way.
Thanks, Shelley. Prior to us logging into the panel discussion, a few of us were chatting a little bit about the idea of what innovations have hit the water treatment sector. And the kind of joke that we got was there hasn't been a lot of change in the last 100 years when it comes to water treatment. I'm summarizing that correctly, right, David, Peter?
yeah, correct. I mean,
Okay. So that leads me into my next question, which was, whoever on the channel wants to pop up and answer, feel free to do so. Why hasn't the water treatment sector seen a lot of changes in innovation? Peter,
It's kind of like why is the sky blue question, right?
I mean, there's a lot of things that continue to pop up in the industry
yeah.
that those of us that have been in this for a while are always suspect of, because it usually comes to market with a lot of marketing behind it and no certification. So it kind of gives a black eye to our industry, unfortunately, as a result of those things. So again, I think, as Shelley put it very well, is that if you're handling products, you go back to your supplier, who goes back to the manufacturer for your guidance. And you've got to trust the people that you're partnering with to provide you the quality products that are certified to do what it's supposed to do on a regular basis. And keep yourself out of trouble today. We live in a litigious society, right?
I think that there's been,
the other
sorry.
side to that.
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Jess.
I think there's two categories of advancements. There's the ones that don't really mean much, and then there's the ones that change the industry. So like going from time clock to metered systems, I think that was a huge advancement. Sure. And some of the things you see now is more to do with connectivity and giving you some more information, which the more you use it, the more you become efficient with your systems and how they work. There's some exciting things, I think, with home water softeners and how they're combining different technologies together, like the idea of having like a leak stop technology in your water softener, which will then, so you're kind of doing two things at once with a softener, which I think is pretty great. And there's been some real positives in the States with those, where they can even affect your home insurance because they reduce the risk in your home. I do a lot more work commercially, and I think they've just kind of refined the systems a bit better, where instead of what they used to do was, size systems based on the worst case scenario. And and they would put in these giant systems where it seems to be things are now modular. Like you don't want to go so big. It's way better to do something with 2 medium-sized systems instead of one huge system. So that kind of stuff, and because they can talk and communicate and bring each other online when they want to, that's been a big advancement, even though it's a little bit old, but a really good one. So that's what I'd say.
Good point. And when we're doing our training, we're always talking about, especially in the commercial environment, that so if somebody calls you to replace a piece of equipment, when it was working, right? Was it, because typically, as you said, we oversized everything as an industry, and there's no good reason to do that anymore because you're losing all your efficiencies by doing that.
Right.
Shelley, were you going to add something too?
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to be the devil's advocate when you say that there hasn't been technologies. I've seen over my many year tenure some technologies that have certainly come through. I mean, reverse osmosis, the amount of waste that it used to produce back 30 years ago compared to what the waste is now on reverse osmosis. What the ultraviolet lights used to look like 30 years ago compared to now, they're in a package system. So it's kind of nice that they're all built into one. So you're not having to do double the plumbing. When you get to the water softeners, I mean, the technology behind water softeners, I mean, it's the resin and you have to exchange it. So that's the chemistry to it, right? But the actual valves that go onto the top of the unit have had some advancements on the technology side of things. As Jesse referred to as the multi-tank commercial side, there's also been now technology where you can put 2 tanks in with 1 valve to control that. Like, I mean, those are technologies that have come a long way from where we were 30 years ago. So
Agree with that.
Okay. I liked the comment by Jesse there about connectivity. I know I cover a lot, not just this part of the industry. Our magazine covers a lot of the skilled trades, and connectivity has been something that I've noticed, I think, across the board in skilled trades, something that is becoming more and more prevalent in our products. That makes me think of the whole AI thing. I know I didn't have a question necessarily geared towards any of you guys on this, but I'm kind of interested in learning a little bit about how AI might shape the future of the water treatment sector. Do any of you guys have any comments on that?
Definitely trending would have something to do with that, right? Being able to read into trends of usages and how to, it would all be in the pursuit of efficiency, I would think. Commercially, it would probably be, especially RO systems, they're so finicky, and they usually are feeding systems that are very dependent on good quality water. So that kind of stuff, I could definitely see a spot for that. Emails in our industry, it helps with writing emails. So
yeah,
that's not directly related, but it's certainly caught fire around here.
For sure. Anything else?
There actually is the opportunity. Yeah, there's actually an opportunity through AI to help you with your service contracts. And, you can get the programs that'll set up exactly the service contract to follow up once you've installed something, and follow from there. So there's a couple of great companies that are kind of helping to make that happen in our water treatment sector. So
I think on the sales side, probably the ability to identify markets and know where to go, and where to spend your money, and activity levels will be much more defined with AI.
Thank you. I have a question from the audience. Shelley, this one's directed directly at you. This one is from Peter. He's asking, what is the CWQA doing to promote the full replacement of lead water service lines in Canada? the conceptualization of the question was, Ontario has not adopted the national standard, and municipalities are only mandated to test for lead at the main, not the tap, sorry, and do not have to inform consumers of the risk. We have eliminated lead in paint, in gasoline, and more recently in school plumbing, but it seems to be still tolerated for private residences because of money. Would like to know more about CWQA's position?
Okay, so I don't know exactly off the top if the CWQA has a full position on the lead. Obviously, our members are capable and able to help mitigate the lead as it comes into their homes and things like that. But we are working with, and I was part of a panel in the US with discussion with the AWWA, which it would be to the Ontario OWWA about, they're calling it one water or fit for purpose water, where the municipalities know and understand that they don't have the infrastructure money to be able to go out and deal with all of the replacement of the lines. So they are looking at wanting to find a fit for purpose treatment that maybe the water treatment professionals could help in putting in a point of entry or a point of use treatment to help mitigate the issues of lead in homes. So there's conversations that are happening through a couple of different associations that we are trying to find ways and means to be able to make solutions. But from an advocacy point of view to the municipalities or the governments and things like that, there has not been action on our behalf at this point. But good question.
My answer is, how much are you willing to spend for your water every month? Because that's where the money comes from for a good portion of it. And your water tax.
You know, this testing at the water main, I think those rules have been changed. When we had the lead crisis in London here about, I think, 10 or 12 years ago, that was the big problem. The city was testing the water in test taps they had on the mains, which were all cast iron. They saw no lead at all. And I think someone squealed on them to the local newspaper, and the reporters started testing water in people's homes and found that the lead was way out of spec. And basically, at the end of the day, what they found what had happened was over time, the pH of Lake Huron, where most of London's water come from, due to acid rain, had lowered. And so basically what was happening, the lead service pipes, which generally are safe from as far as leaching lead into the water because they're coated with calcium, the calcium was all being leached off. And as soon as the calcium was gone, it was starting to leach the lead into the water. And so eventually what they did was they actually buffer the water now, so the pH is slightly above neutral, and the pipes are all recoating, and the lead problems in homes by and large have disappeared.
Okay, thanks, Peter. That actually kind of reminds me, I wanted to talk a little bit about testing when it comes to water quality. What lessons have we learned when it comes to the water testing, and how best can that shape where the water treatment industry will be going in the future?
I guess it all depends what kind of water you're going to test. Is it well water or is it municipal water?
Okay, let's start with well water then.
Okay, well water, basically, you're going to have to do some type of basic water chemistry, which sadly most water treatment dealers don't do. I mean, they basically install a softener and a UV and they say that's that. It's not doing anybody any proper service by doing it that way, but a large part of the business, that's how it's conducted. But the starting point always needs to be a basic water chemistry. How much hardness do you have? How much iron do you have? What's the UV transmission of the water? What's the organic level? You need a basic starting point to say, okay, in order to treat this water to potable standards, this is the treatment chain you're going to need. Which, and why water treatment dealers are afraid of this, I don't know, because they'd end up selling a whole lot more equipment if they went ahead and did that.
I think it comes down to the cost, Leah, on getting that water tested to a certain extent. I mean, right now at this point in time, you can get well owners can get their water tested for bacteria from the Ontario Public Health, but that's it. That's all that they'll do. Like they will not test anything further. So if you're getting into the north where there might be well water that might contain arsenic or, you know, things like that, it starts to become a cost factor for not only the homeowner, but also the water treatment professional.
So, okay.
Well, and I guess, you know what, here's a question I could likely ask Jess, because Jess would likely do this on a more regular basis, but the average cost for a full water analysis from a lab, Jess, it could run anywhere between $200 to $300. Am I right in assuming that?
Yeah, like if you know, there's levels to this thing, right? So like Peter had mentioned, you know, like most treatment companies out there will have a standard kit that will test TDS and hardness and iron and such like that. But then you have some people that are interested because of the area that we're talking about well water now. And they want to know because they live beside a farmer's field or they have some other, you know, they want to get their water tested for everything. And it's just a huge broad spectrum test to do. So even if you do a test that would be around like say $500, that would still not cover every single thing that you could find in your water. Most of the stuff is just random trace elements and that you find. But so yeah, it's actually better to say, I'm worried about this in my water, be it lead or fertilizer or anything. Like, is there a test that we can test for that? Just to say, I want to test for everything would really take you down a rabbit hole.
You know, I'm going to defer to Mike. Mike did a lot of testing in the field for many years in his beginning tenure in this industry. And I think it comes down to knowing your market, knowing what's in the water, in your well water in your market, and having the right test equipment in order to do that. No, you're not going to get 100%, Jesse, as you just said, you know, unless you do extensive testing. But Mike, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I had a pretty substantial test kit because I worked in problem water markets. I mean, I was up against methane gas, 40, 50 parts per million of sulfur. I mean, I was up against a lot of bad stuff. So I carried actual filters in my car that I could run the water through, test it before and after. And if there was any doubt, then I did do a broad spectrum lab test to find out what was going on, depending on the location. So sometimes you have to not worry about the money so much. And, you know, somebody's building a new home. Sometimes you have to do those kinds of tests, you know. So, I mean, I had one fellow he built a home next to a construction dump. There was a big lawsuit. The government didn't want to let him build, wouldn't give him a building permit. He sued. He got the permission, and the water had so much sulfide in it, had 10,000 parts per million of sulfide. It was just craziness from all of the wallboard that had been dumped there. So, you know, it just depends on, you know, where you're at, what the ground strata is. And there again, a lot of your plumbers or well drillers, they're very familiar with what the ground strata contains. They're more astute than you think, a lot of the plumbers.
And, you know, going back to the basics I always talked about was your TDS test. You do your TDS test and then do your hardness and iron and all the rest of the things that you can do in the home. If you add all those up, if there's a big delta between what you add up and what the TDS comes out to, then then now you need to go get more testing. That's the unknown factor that's going to cause you nightmares that we've dealt with over the years in problem water markets. Shelley, you're shaking your head. You agree with it, right? I mean, that's kind of a litmus
Yeah.
test, right? So,
Well, generally,
for
I mean,
sure.
you can get organics that'll depress that TDS test, unfortunately. So it's not an overall rule of thumb. You have to be careful with that assumption in all instances. So, like you can put a pinch of sugar in a water sample and a TDS will drop like a rock.
yeah.
Peter, did you have something you wanted to add?
I think these are all good points. I think
Can't hear you.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Basically, what we need is more people that take the CWQA training courses on how to properly analyze water, and not looking for hundreds of contaminants, but looking for the basic things. What's the TDS? What's the hardness? What's the iron content? Measuring UV transmission. It's not that expensive to buy some of the UVT meters that are out there. If your UVT is poor, then you've got organics in the water. So I think there's a lot of things a water treatment dealer can diagnose at very low cost as part of his sales demonstration. And he would do a lot better job, him or her, than what's presently happening in a lot of cases.
So, Jesse, to the start of this conversation, you mentioned that it's not best practice to just say test for everything. It's best to come in and ask for specific types of contaminants in the water to look for. How is that best approached to do? Is that up to customer education to know when they come to the technician to discuss that this is what we need to test for? Or is that Shelley, you're shaking your head, so I'm assuming the answer is no to that. So it's up to the technician to make sure that the homeowner is aware of what is supposed to be tested then, correct?
Well, I think the best first strategy is to listen to what they're saying, right?
Okay.
So if they're talking to you about, rusty colored water or water that smells like rotten eggs, or I have a lot of bubbles in my water, these are clues that would kind of send you in the right direction. Or, I have dingy clothes, or I don't like the taste of this water.
Okay.
These are all things that would sort of send you in a certain direction. And these tests are like common tests that most water treatment guys would know how to do. But if you talk about contaminants, like that's a whole other area of testing, right? Most people would take something like that to a lab and you would submit, and there's just different spectrums that you can ask for them to look at. And like I say, so it'd be something like that you'd want to test, like Lake Ontario water, right? If you were concerned about some of the trace elements that would be there, and that'd be a good way to sell an RO probably to anybody, I would imagine.
Okay.
Leah, I was going to say, I think, we break the water down into aesthetic, and then we break the water down into drinking contaminants. Okay, so if we go from the aesthetic side of things, those aesthetics, if like their iron is an aesthetic, but if that iron is really high, then that'll impact what the UV does. So those are, we can't just think that the aesthetic ones are just, if they smell it, they don't like it. They, if you see it, you don't like it. We still have to come back to, got to check for bacteria. And then you can do your general sort of 5-6 tests that are out there. And that'll give us a really good picture of where we go forward.
Okay. So I know the beginning, way back when we first started this question out, we specified well water. Now, if we switch to municipally sourced water, how does this conversation differ?
Well, you're looking at well water. It doesn't have generally the same kind of contaminants. Most of your municipal water, like Jesse mentioned, Lake Ontario. So most of your municipal water is going to come from surface water, which is a whole different spectrum on what might be in that. So surface water, you're going to have Cryptosporidium, Giardia from your Cobra chickens there in Canada. So you're gonna have other things like PFAS finding their way in from the rain, from other methods of delivery, more agriculture. I mean, not that well water is not susceptible, but not as much as surface water. So you're looking for different stuff with surface water.
Okay.
One advantage you have.
Well, yeah, the
Sorry,
municipal.
1 second. Peter, I know I can hear you, but you're talking a little quiet again.
Okay, let me try another audio source.
Well, that's
No,
better.
you're good now.
You're good,
now,
yeah.
Peter.
It's good now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. The one advantage you have with municipal water is most municipal water providers will publish annual reports as to exactly what's in the water. You get like 5 pages of contaminants. They have before treatment and after treatment. So the nice thing is dealing with a municipal water supply is you're basically, you know exactly what the water is every house that you go into. These sales guys that show up and say, we're here to test your water. Well, it's a big scam because, I mean, a couple of clicks on a computer and they'll know what's in that water. And, most municipal water reports will tell you how they treat the water. So like in the city of Toronto, which takes their water out of Lake Ontario, which basically is the bottom of the Great Lakes, and it goes through that Niagara Falls chemical valley. On a dark night, it glows in the dark. And so they use activated carbon and they pre-treat with ozone. And they take out all the precursors, and so it ends up being pretty decent water that gets delivered. So then the thing comes down to, what happens through the distribution system. The thing you always have to remember is water only meets all its licensing requirements when it leaves the water treatment plant. What happens to it through the distribution system, you have no idea what might happen. And even some of the testing we do is kind of, they'll test like for E. coli and coliforms in municipal water. Well, E. coli and coliforms indicate fecal matter from livestock. It's hard to understand that there might be fecal matter from livestock underneath the paved road. So it's kind of a useless test. I know in the States, they're seriously looking at other indicator organisms that they might use to validate the safety of the water. So, and there is a lot of interesting research now going on with relating to water aging and plumbing systems. Because one of the things you have is, which they've taken a serious look at, is if the water's in the distribution main, has a certain chlorine residual in it, the surface area to volume is actually pretty low. Whereas if you get it into a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch pipe inside a house, that reduces significantly. And if there's any organics in that water at all, whatever chlorine is left in the water could dissipate instantaneously. So now you've got water in your plumbing system that basically has no disinfectant in it. And they've done pipe studies where basically they just have these sample pipe racks where they run water through and kind of emulating what normal household usage might be, which I'm not quite sure how they came up with the cycles, but they did. But basically they found was they could get colonization of certain organisms in those pipe rack studies in 2 weeks. So things like Legionella, mycobacteria, that type of thing. So it's and we know from other studies that people have done. So there's a study from the U.S. Health Journal, I think about 13 or 14 years ago, where they put filtration and UV devices, point of use ones, thousands of them literally, in a totally blind study, and found out that people with a very simple UV device that only produced about 30 millijoules actually had about 16% less reported gastrointestinal illness than the other crowd. So there are things happening in public water systems that we don't really know about. And, it's kind of a new area that people are looking at seriously. So I wouldn't use it in any marketing, but it's certainly something worth remembering and something that, that science is advancing.
Shelley, did you have something you wanted to also add?
Well, I mean, I think it's, Peter alluded to the water reports that all the different cities have to do. And in defense of the municipalities, they do their very best to provide everyone that's on municipal water with safe drinking water. I think when water treatment comes into play on the municipal side of things, that the water treatment professionals will enhance it. So as an example, somebody maybe doesn't like the chlorine smell in their water, then a water treatment professional can enhance that with a carbon filter. If you want to be not having to worry when there might be a boil water advisory, you would put in a UV. If you have, where I'm from, 40 grain hard water, we want a water softener because I'd like my clothes not to feel like bricks. So, those are some of the things that it would just be enhancing the municipal water from a treatment perspective is what you're doing.
Okay. Would you suggest then that these municipal reports, like every homeowner should at least once every, 5 years, check out what the updated municipal report would look like for their area? Is that something that homeowners should be like keeping up on, or is that something that's just more valuable for the technician to make sure that they're aware of what's going on potentially in their area with their working on municipal systems?
I think every technician needs to know where to find those water reports. That's one of the things that I think that should be in your package of goods that when you go to see a homeowner. The homeowners, they're not easy reports to read. They can get pretty detailed about, especially when you get into, say, Vancouver, there's 12 different potential sites where they're pulling the water from there, and you've got to go and figure out, am I in this? Am I in this? So I don't think it's something that a consumer, but they certainly can go and look and understand it. And then when they have questions, that's where I say, call a water treatment professional. Call somebody that knows how to look and read at these reports.
To that end, in the States, there's a good site called ewg.org. And so you can go into that and you can put your zip code in and it will tell you exactly what's in the water in every one of the municipal supplies. I'm actually surprised that that's not available in Canada, because we talk about that in our training, Mike and I, and everybody in Canada says, well, how do we get that? And I said, it's not, to my knowledge, it's not available, but I think it would be a valuable resource.
Agreed.
Yeah, that David, that's great, and that's actually one of the things that we're using as an example in asking the new Canada Water Agency. The CWQA is asking the new Canada Water Agency to pull together a Canada water map, or that data or information, so that we have a centralized area to be able to pull that information. So it is what we put into our pre-budget submissions every single time, asking for a much more detailed.
Yeah, it's a nice to have. It would be a nice to have type thing, right?
Yeah.
I know we had touched base on it on one of the presentations earlier today, and it has already been mentioned in today's panel discussion as well. I just wanted to loop back to it and kind of focus a little bit more on the idea of PFAS, because I know it has become quite a big hot topic in everything related to water treatment. What lessons can we learn from knowing that these forever plastics are found in our water, and how will that shape the water treatment industry moving forward?
Well, I will say this. I mean, Peter mentioned that Toronto, for instance, uses, and I'm not familiar with their process, but but nonetheless, they're not treating for PFAS. They're not treating for microplastics. There's quite a few other contaminants that are not being treated. For instance, 95% of North Americans have PFAS in their bloodstream. Now, that does not necessarily say it's from municipal water. It can be from other sources.
Absolutely.
Maybe they're drinking out of these plastic bottles. However, nonetheless, this is something that you have to pretty much assume today is going to be in that public water supply. And it's going to have to be treated. There again, Peter mentioned carbon. Carbon's a wonderful material. It does a lot of good for people. VOCs and right on down the line. And then, of course, reverse osmosis, nanofiltration, and ultrafiltration, also very good ways to improve the drinking water portion.
Peter,
Well,
are you
I think
talking?
I think most recently,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I was going to say, most recently, the CBC sort of just did a really cool article about where the hotspots of PFAS are in Canada. So if you haven't seen it, it's interesting to go and look for that. So, I mean, the hotspots are right around all of our military bases and things like that at this point in time, because that's where they do a lot of training, the firefighting foams, et cetera, et cetera. But they're looking at those spots and remediating them at this point in time. But it's in all of our Great Lakes. It's in, all of the groundwater sources and things like that. But it comes from something, just as simple as, the wrapping paper from I'm going to use a Harvey's because the U.S. guys don't know who Harvey's are, but a Harvey's burger comes in that wrapping with the plastic on it.
Burger King.
Yeah,
Oh.
same thing.
I know Harvey's.
Canadian here, so
I lived in Canada for 5 years, so I know all those places.
there you go. So, that gets into the waste sites, and then that breaks down and it gets into our water. So,
Exactly.
I mean, it's pretty much everywhere. But municipal or well water, there are technologies that will remove it.
Well, and the awareness is going to get greater. I mean, when we started training on this, 3 or 4 years ago, Mike, in Canada, the people were saying, well, we've never heard of it. Well, the level used to be that they looked at was 600 parts per trillion. It's now 30 parts per trillion. So the levels come down significantly. So the awareness is going to become greater because it's going to be found now more prevalent, right? So
it's not going to be, it's not over the limit.
Yeah.
So there's no problem. No problema, amigos, amigas.
I think the biggest issue with PFAS is we certainly have ways to take PFAS out of water. You can use carbon. Resin, I think, is a good choice because the PFAS bonds itself so tightly to the resin. But the big problem you have is most of the treatment options, all you're doing is taking it out of the water. And then when you dispose of that treatment media, you're putting it right back into the environment again.
Correct.
So, people are now starting to look at, how can we actually destroy the PFAS? And so there's a lot of people working on that. I know the University of British Columbia has come up with a method that supposedly works really well. I haven't been able to find very much out about it, but it uses a catalyst and a carbon filter with UV light that supposedly destroys PFAS very quickly, but it's not commercialized as of this point in time.
Well,
yeah,
let's
but like
face
you
it,
said,
Peter.
your methods are just concentrating it, and then what do we do with it? So incinerating it is one of the ways to do that, but what happens to all of the incineration?
Well, you can destroy it. If you do plasma destruction, the biggest problem with incineration is politically it's incorrect to talk about incinerating things.
Right.
So, yeah, that's and there's a lot of misinformation around PFAS. Is like, a lot of people assume that Teflon is a PFAS, but Teflon, any of the fluoropolymers are not listed as PFAS on the EPA's list of PFASs. So you got people throwing out their nonstick pans and stuff because they think they're poisonous. But I mean, the difference between a PFAS and Teflon is Teflon, the bonding chains of the Teflon are extremely, extremely long. And this is the most stable material, inert material known to mankind. And if we didn't have Teflon, we'd have a heck of a time with ultra pure water applications and things like that. We've used Teflon for years in our UV sensor probes because Teflon actually transmits ultraviolet light reasonably well. And just a couple of weeks ago, we recalibrated a sensor that was 22 years old that was still working fine and showed no signs of degradation. It'd been exposed to ultraviolet light continuously for 22 years. There's no other polymer on the face of the earth that would do that and still be, you have a handful of dust at this point.
Okay, anything else to add for PFAS? Okay. So one of the questions I had, unfortunately, Jeff couldn't join today because he was not feeling well, but he did send a question in that he wanted me to ask. And we might have touched base on it already, depending on what your answers are. So his question that he thought we should talk to about was, considering the future of water treatment, what is the issue you see, as the most important going forward? Any thoughts?
Can you repeat it just one more time, Leah?
Yeah, that's okay. I stumbled over it a few times when I tried to read that one. Considering the future of water treatment, what is the issue you see as the most important going forward?
I
I'll take a stab at this only again because, a couple of things that are really coming to the forefront right now anyways is obviously private wells, and the private well water is making people sick, and therefore Health Canada is now involved in trying to find ways in order to get people to, better test their wells and find out what's in it and then get it treated, etc. So I think the health issues that they are now starting to see with respect to water are what's raising the awareness a lot more between, PFAS causes kidney damage and cancer. Arsenic causes cancer. I mean, we're seeing contaminants now that are causing some significant health issues, which are going to put strain onto our health system. So I think, I think it was Peter that mentioned about lead. I mean, there's another one that is, a pretty significant health issue going forward. So I think as we see more studies being done by what's causing some of the health challenges of Canadians, then they're going to tie some of that back to our water sources. And just the fact that the federal government is putting that much more into getting that Canada Water Agency up and running and securing and looking after our surface water and the Great Lakes and things like that, I think that's going to be the biggest. Where health has come into play, water is now going to be looked at more often.
Okay.
I think probably one of the biggest issues we have is, especially in rural areas, is that people live with the assumption that water should be free. They're not used to paying for water. And this really struck me during the pandemic, because the water treatment business during the pandemic just went absolutely crazy. And I talked to a number of water treatment dealers that had people from the GTA move into a home in a rural community and had never considered the fact that this home was on a private well and that water didn't taste the same as the water in Toronto. And they show up and they're looking at toilets that have brown stains in them and the water tastes awful. And they call up the water treatment guy and they literally tell the water treatment guy, I want my water to taste like the water in Toronto. And the guy's kind of going, he's scared because, yeah, he can do that, but that's like a $16,000 tab to do that. And he said, I quoted a couple of them and they just wrote me a check. So these were people that were used to paying for water, realized it had some value, whereas the local residents, their assumption is water should be free. And
don't assume, right? Don't assume.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing. One of the upcoming contaminants that we hear a fair bit about in our business is the blue-green algae and how to deal with that, which it's a difficult contaminant contaminant to deal with, because, you know, if as long as the algae is intact, you can filter it out with filtration. But as soon as it breaks, you now get the bad stuff in the water, and so you need to have some way. You know, you almost need a tannin filter to take it out because it's an organic. So that's one that we hear a fair bit about.
Is that found in the lakes? Is that where that's getting introduced into the bottled water?
Wherever you have these big algae blooms.
Oh.
So, and there've been like water systems on the other side of Lake Erie that have been shut down for 2 or 3 weeks because of algae blooms at the water intake.
Wow.
They just couldn't deal with it.
I think if you've been to any water show in the last few years, the theme that keeps kind of coming up is it's not as prevalent here in Southern Ontario, but pretty much everywhere else. It seems like in North America, water conservation and reuse and the pursuit of net zero and just trying to do better with water, especially from the expense side. Water's more expensive now when you do have to buy it. So that seems to be a growing topic in the industry. So I think that could also maybe be thrown into the mix with an important thing moving forward, and what we do with it afterwards, and all those types of things. So
yeah, we didn't even touch base on rainwater whatsoever in today's discussions at all, and I'm sure that would be an entire at least hour session that could be
Probably 2 hours.
yeah.
Okay, well, we have 3 minutes left in our panel discussion. I can't believe this time has flown by. For anybody still sitting in, we got lots of you guys still. If you guys have any questions, you have about 3 minutes left for us to, or forever hold your peace. So is there anything else? David, you were starting to answer something at the beginning.
Well, what I was going to say was going back to Peter's earlier comment about testing water, and we got people out there testing water that don't know what they're doing and how to do it. And I think that the precursor is education. They all need to get, I believe everybody should be certified to test water, know how to test water, and know how to treat it before they get out in front of the consumer and give information that's not correct, because it happens every day. And it gives a black eye to the industry, quite frankly. I think it's gotten better, but
I agree, David. Good point. Great point.
Yeah, we talked to some of those people a couple times a day.
yeah. And they said, well, we just need a UV, Peter. Well, what's the water analysis?
Yep.
Well, no, they just need a UV, right?
Yep. I had one call where the guy had put in a water softener, and he literally, he'd been in the business for 25 years and literally did not know when you put the valve in backwash that it was just raw water going through it.
Wow. All right. If we have no more questions.
Education.
That's what it comes down to, right?
Oh yeah.
Be involved in your organizations, whether it be regional or national, and get educated, right? Use your suppliers. A lot of them have good help for you.
We had a gentleman in the chats earlier. Mark handled the question, but he touched base on that. He said he was this was a gentleman named Liam, I think was. Yeah. He's a 3rd-year apprentice in plumbing and commercial new build side of things. And he was asking for suggestions on where he can get any more training on some of the topics that discussed today. He said he doesn't touch this stuff at work and he'd love to learn more. So Mark suggested CWQA.
Absolutely.
Yep, we have the full certification programs online, and in the fall we'll be running an instructor-led with on the install side. So lots of opportunities.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we have like 20 seconds left now, so I'm going to do a little bit of a wrap up. I'm going to do the wrap up for the entire session, probably, if I can still hear, because it's still on the main stage anyway. So I just wanted to thank everybody here on the panel. Peter, David, Mike, Shelley, Jesse, I appreciate very much so each of you guys taking some time out of your day today to sit on this panel. It's been very informative, and I appreciate every single one of you guys for being on it. I also want to thank everybody who's joined in today on all of our sessions. I hope you guys were able to learn at least one new thing out of today. I sure did, and I'm assuming one of you guys have done you have done so as well. So thank you very much. We have another technical training day coming up in a few months. I'm blanking currently on the date. I believe it should be on hydronics. I do know we have a technical training day coming up. Otherwise, we will reach out to you guys if you guys are interested, and you guys can register for that as well. Otherwise, again, thank you so much for joining in on the day, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day as well. All right. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Take care.
Care.
Thanks, Leah.